Hi, my name is Tom and this is my channel Integral Views. I attended the Unite the Kingdom march in London today and I'm going to tell you what actually happened at the event from first-hand experience. And let me tell you, it's very, very different to what was reported in the mainstream media and the way that politicians portrayed the event. But look, if you could do me a favor, right? Because YouTube does not like these kind of controversial topics. And so it's not going to push this video. So any likes, comments and hypes, it really, really helps to spread the word because the mainstream media is out there just portraying this event in a way that it really wasn't. So I think that, yeah, we really need to spread the word on social media. So today there were actually two events. There was the Unite the Kingdom march, which was like the Tommy Robinson event. And then at the same time, there was this pro-Palestine event. I think it was a Nakba event, something like that. Now, what I want to do before I go through my experience of Unite the Kingdom, I want to have a look at Keir Starmer's recent video. So this happened before the event. Let's have a look at how he was portraying it.
Tomorrow's march in London is a reminder of what we're up against in the battle of our values. The organisers, including convicted thugs and racists, are peddling hatred and division, plain and simple. Their goal is to convince people that Britain's problems are caused by those living alongside them. But that is not the Britain that I know. This is a country built on decency, fairness and respect. A country that is at its best when people from different backgrounds come together in common purpose. This is our country, with a majority who share those values, a majority who may not always be as loud, but must always define who we are. So, my government will not stand in the way of peaceful protest, but we will act decisively against hatred. We will use the full force of the law when that hatred manifests as violence.
It seems like every video that Keir Starmer makes, he's trying to dig a hole even deeper. It's ever more surreal how disconnected this man is from the reality. It's so weird watching these videos because it's like this alternate universe, right? This alternate Fabian society globalist universe that is increasingly in just a smaller and smaller echo chamber. Now, so he said that people at the event were peddling hate and division. That's not at all what I saw. It's not what I saw. And also he mentioned the word racism and thugs, right? So he's putting all those words. This is normal stuff for Keir Starmer. So he's associating racism and thuggery with those people at that event and the entire event, saying it's divisive, all these kinds of things. And then he's saying that the United Kingdom is based on fairness. But actually what's happening is very unfair. Two-tier Keir. It's not fair, right? It actually, the United Kingdom should be based on fairness, but what he does is two-tier. It's not fair. That's a very big problem. So the Fabians, Keir Starmer and Sadiq got together to plan this exercise with the police that seemed like almost a military exercise where they got very serious about planning from this massive threat, this divisive, terrible threat that was going to descend onto London, right? So then they got together in this room and you can see these photos. It's absolutely ridiculous. Just look at their faces. They look, the way they're looking, it's like a major, like an invasion, like some kind of military invasion that's happening, this huge threat. Look at how serious they're looking. And bear in mind that we have these pro-Palestine marches on almost a weekly basis in the capital city. And you don't see this happening all of the time. Look at their faces. It's unbelievable. And then you've also got David Lammy, who's taken a brief break from getting rid of jury trials to comment on this as well. So he says, peaceful protest is a fundamental right and one which I'll always protect. But if protest turns to violence, we will act swiftly with extra court capacity. Hold on a sec, David. Didn't you just restrict jury trials? Or aren't you in the process of restricting jury trials because of the court backlogs and all of a sudden you got this extra court capacity? Isn't that weird? And also notice he's saying, he brings up the word violence again. And this is just setting this narrative, right, from all of our politicians. They are disconnected. But it's not just the politicians doing this. This was a narrative that was spreading right the way through mainstream media as well. So I just want to look at one example from Sky News.
Put them in a vehicle and get them to the custody suite. So it is difficult if you're, as you see there, bang in the middle of that group of people and something happens, you need to step in, you then got to get yourself somewhere where a police vehicle can get to, which isn't difficult in the middle. And what we've got today, two big marches. So you've got a huge part of central London that's now shut off. So you can find yourself between the middle of the two and nowhere for you and your prisoner to go to. So it has to be like quite a definite decision, and we've got to step in at this point, at this time, to take that person out of the crowd. But 11 arrests so far, huge crowds already, as we can see, going right the way back along. Stewards at the front. The stewards will manage the crowd.
Now, if operationally, if there were a skirmish that broke out, I'm just speaking hypothetically here, in the middle of this big street here, of this big throng of people, how would police deal with that?
You go in. You have to go, but you would go in almost with your team.
Other than so you're looking at it from. I mean, we're showing people aerial pictures here from the helicopter. Just talk us through how police are getting that.
What are they talking about? They're talking about skirmishes happening within the Unite the Kingdom march in the protest. And they're talking about having to, violence and having to go in. It's very, very negative. It's all danger, violence. That's the way this event is portrayed in media, but that is not the way it is portrayed. Completely the opposite of how it really is. And I'm going to tell you through this video how it really is. But just think about that. So Sky News, they're talking about, how would you get police into this? Because of course they're all violent, terrible, horrible thugs. So we're going to need to get police into that event. Let me tell you, I've been to 2 of these events. Not once have I ever seen any kind of unrest at all within either of those marches at all. Not the one that happened today and not the previous one from last year. Never, not once. Okay, so let's bring this all down to reality. Let's exit this mainstream media and political bubble, echo chamber, right, fantasy world, and come down to reality. What actually happened? Well, there were, I would say, hundreds of thousands of people there at the Unite the Kingdom march today. And again, same as last year, very low arrest rates. Remember, I said there were 2 events. There was the pro-Palestine one, and then there was the Unite the Kingdom one at the same time. And over both events, because the police haven't split the data out, over both events, 31 arrests in total. Now, they put something like 4,000 policemen. The police presence was out of this world. There were police absolutely everywhere. But essentially, it was like they were preparing all this seriousness. They did other things that we'll go through later as well. But there were only 31 arrests. Isn't that weird? Doesn't really seem like a lot of violent thuggery, does it? Let's put this in context, shall we? Let's use an example. How about Notting Hill Carnival? So in the Notting Hill Carnival in 2025, it's a 2-day event, there were 528 arrests. 528. There were only 31 today over 2 protests, likely most of them on the left, which I'll show you examples of later. Okay, why I would say that. But so Notting Hill Carnival, 528 arrests, okay? And so there were 11 firearms that were confiscated, 40 knives, 21 people were recalled to prison. This is from Notting Hill Carnival over 2 days. 50 possession of offensive weapon offences, okay? And then 18 sexual offences over 2 days. That is just out of this world. So, of course, you would expect these Fabians in charge, these elite leaders, to have been warning and planning for it like some kind of military invasion like they did for the Unite the Kingdom event today. So let's have a look at the way that Sadiq Khan responded to the Notting Hill Carnival. All right, so this is 2025. Sadiq Khan, Notting Hill Carnival is a world-famous celebration of Caribbean culture. It brings Londoners and visitors together and boosts our economy by 400 million a year. As mayor, I'm proud to provide extra funding for this iconic event to go ahead. So they're providing extra funding, they're celebrating it, they're putting positive images online. 2-tier. And then he went on, and this is 2025. The world-famous Notting Hill Carnival has returned to the heart of West London. Londoners and visitors have come together to celebrate our Caribbean communities, showing the best of our city and the power of culture to unite us. Again, so he's talking about the power of culture uniting us all. Because it's not British, it's a different culture, then they'll celebrate it, right? Even though, so Unite the Kingdom event, way less violence, way less arrests, way less crime, no sexual offences, etc. And that's terrible. They're harmful, dangerous, nasty. But this Caribbean thing, yeah, we love that. That's what we support and love. One more from Sadiq Khan, just to really nail this, right, and show you what two-tier is about. Sadiq Khan, this is 2025, this year's Notting Hill Carnival again captured the very best of our capital city. This is after it ended. This is after they knew how many arrests and sexual offences and firearms and knives and all of that kind of stuff happened at the event. The best of our city, a city where we believe that diversity is a strength to be celebrated. London without Carnival is unthinkable. Unbelievable insanity from Sadiq Khan. And he always turns off his replies, so you can't even speak to power. What a muppet. Anyway, right, so moving on to Keir Starmer. So the CPS, so Keir Starmer used to head up the CPS, and in preparation for this terrible, violent potential threat that was descending on London, which is just British people, for the Unite the Kingdom event, the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service that Keir Starmer used to head up, they released all of this updated guidance saying that was specifically about religious and racial hatred and that kind of stuff, right? So again, like two-tier, oh, we've really got to do something different for this group because we don't agree with them ideologically, because they are patriots and they support the United Kingdom, and we support everybody else with our globalist ideology. But that's not the only example of two-tier policing. We also had the introduction of facial recognition, but only for the Unite the Kingdom part, right? Only for the Unite the Kingdom protest, not for the pro-Palestine protest, and never for the pro-Palestine protests, because they do them all of the time, almost every week. And there are a huge amount of arrests for those as well. By the way, not just the small amount for Unite the Kingdom. This is just completely insane. Now let me tell you my actual experience, the way that I experienced it. What was the reality? Well, I saw a lot of people together, a lot of different ethnicities, a lot of different ages, families, okay? A lot of people who clearly care a lot about this country. And I had a lot of conversations with them. I saw no violence whatsoever all day. I saw no, really hateful kind of chanting as we see on the left. It was really a kind of a uniting kind of atmosphere. It's just, I tell you what, it's crazy when you attend one of these events. It will open your eyes, because I remember the first time, so last year was the first event that I attended because I wanted to go and see for myself. I didn't know at the time. I wasn't into that movement. So I went to go and see for myself. And then I thought, wow, while I was there, I was like, wow, this is going to be reported in the news as something really positive. This is such a great thing that's happening here, right? Because I saw all the flags, very, very, very low levels of disruption or anything like that, totally different to other protests that we see all the time in London. And I thought, what an amazing thing. These people are coming together. And, and I thought, I've been talking to people from many different ethnicities all day. So clearly that's going to be reported in the news, and then this whole narrative's going to be killed. But it's carried on. I tell you what, when that happens, it blows your mind. It just blows your mind, because it's like you see something and then the politicians tell you that something else is happening, and then the mainstream media come along as well. Because what this is they have this ideology, it's a globalist ideology, and what Unite the Kingdom is about patriotism, prioritizing native British people, okay, prioritizing British people and British culture. And that cuts directly against the narrative, the ideology of the globalists, including our politicians and mainstream media, okay? So that's why they can't confront it. It's the same as the grooming gangs. If they confront it, if they report on it, if they show it, then it undermines their entire ideology. Okay, now I'm going to tell you about some of the people I met, and I want to start with Curtis. So Curtis is a subscriber of mine, and he recognized me and started talking to me. And what a pleasure it was. Really nice to meet you, Curtis. I'm sure that you're watching this. And it's really an honor to have such articulate, intelligent subscribers. It was, a really decent guy. So what a fantastic opportunity to meet you, and also to have you a subscriber. Cheers. Then there are a lot of Iranians there, right? So they're people who fled the IRGC, fled the Iranian regime in Iran, and then left the country, okay? And so they're very much in support of Tommy Robinson. So there was a lot of them there. There were a lot of their flags, etc. And also there were a number of Israel flags. There was support for Jews there largely. And I spoke to this individual, Kerper, and she has this group. She's not a Jew, but it's like this group that support Jews. Had an interesting conversation with her. So they were basically represented there as well. And then I had this conversation with a guy from Hong Kong originally. So he was walking along with this big Union Jack on a pole. And I started talking to him. It was really interesting, because effectively he was telling me about how if he tells people from Hong Kong what things are like here and what the British people, how they're treated by the government and how everything happens with illegal migration and crimes that are not reported on properly and not dealt with properly, then people in Hong Kong just wouldn't believe it. So that was a really interesting conversation. Now for a big one. So as I was rounding a corner right near Euston Station, I came into contact with Steve Laws. So I saw Steve Laws there. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, Steve Laws is like an ethno-nationalist. He's the actual real far right. Okay, so he focuses very heavily on ethnicity, and he'll basically say things like total remigration, that kind of thing. So I went up and I wanted to, because I talk to people all the time, of course, that's why I'm doing this. So I went and spoke to Steve. Steve was perfectly pleasant, right? He was pleasant to me, but the thing that I noticed, and there were others, I spoke to them and I told them my beliefs and how they're different, okay? But essentially the point I want to make is there were not many people there around them. They didn't really have a crowd. Steve was kind of on his own. And I'm just going to show you a video. Now, actually, before I do that, so the thing is, the way the mainstream media portray the United Kingdom event is as if everybody there is has views that are the same as Steve Laws. They'll say racist, etc. Okay, and it's completely wrong. Actually, it's a very small minority at that event. Okay, and that was demonstrated by Steve's reception and the fact that there weren't a lot of people around there. He's actually quite a well-known guy. So I just want to show you a video of how Steve was received at the Unite the Kingdom event.
Steve Laws is a wanker. Steve Laws is a wanker.
Just to be clear, I don't endorse that. Steve's got very controversial views, but I've never actually found him to be kind of really aggressive or anything like that. I think he puts it across often. He seems quite nervous, actually. And I don't endorse people doing that and being insulting like that in person. Have the conversation, right? You might disagree. So I don't endorse it. But anyway, the point I wanted to make is the point I'm making is that it's just another sign, another demonstration of how the Unite the Kingdom event is really misportrayed in the media. Okay, now the last guy I spoke to was a guy from Pakistan. So I thought I'd start talking to this guy who's kind of on the outskirts. And so I had this really long conversation with him. And I started by asking him, what do you think of this event, right? And he said, well, they're basically all racists. And so then, as you can imagine, it turned into a kind of detailed conversation. And I was saying, what it basically boiled down into. So he was born in Britain, okay, but he still referred to himself as from Pakistan. And he was a Muslim as well, right? And he's referring to all of the individuals that unite the kingdom as racists. So when we boiled it down, I basically forced him into this position of recognizing that it's not racism because it's not about ethnicity, right, or immutable characteristics. So what's actually happening is that it's a cultural thing. It's about the culture specifically of Islam, but there's also another part of it which tied in, which is mass migration against the will of the people of this country. Basically what I thought about was, so this guy's parents likely came over in like the 1948 to 1962. There was this open door period effectively after the Second World War. And I think what I was thinking is like, he doesn't seem grateful. So he was talking to me a lot about, well, all of this is Britain's fault. Like what's happening in Gaza is Britain's fault, and what's happened with Israel's Britain's fault, and everything's Britain's fault, and India and Pakistan, everything, the whole thing's Britain's fault because of your empire. Yeah. And I sort of thought, well, you're not, I told him, you're not balancing the books. You're only looking at the negative, right? You're not looking at the positive, which is all of the good that's being given to the world by British culture, vaccines, antiseptic, the Industrial Revolution, electricity, the internet, everything, okay, everything, right? Well, a hell of a lot at least, yeah? So, it's really interesting because it's like, it was a perfect demonstration that, you don't support this country. He actually said, I would not fight for Britain, said that specifically. And I was like, well, this really demonstrates that like you're literally demonstrating the problem and you're mischaracterizing people in this country, okay, who are at this march. It was, anyway, interesting conversation. Now, I said that there were 2 marches, right? So there's the Unite the Kingdom one, and then there's this Nakba event, pro-Palestine one. They have them all the damn time. And I think the one on the left, the pro-Palestine one, was a much smaller number of people. But I just want to point out some things, because this actually is really important, okay? Because it's totally mischaracterized. So, okay, I'll explain. So basically, we've got Zara Sultana, and she's on the left. She's pro-Palestine, etc., right? And I think a second-generation migrant Muslim, again, I think from Pakistan, again, right? And so what she's calling out here for, and always is from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, and this land, this homeland for Palestinian people. Isn't it interesting that the British people, right, no matter their ethnicity, actually what's happening at that march, no matter what you think of it, what's actually happening is that they're basically saying that my homeland, what I associate as home, my country, is under threat because of mass migration, huge cultural change against the will of the people, and we're seeing these attacks happening all of the time that are not being addressed by the politicians. So Zara Sultana is basically advocating for the groups that she cares about, which are Muslims in other countries, faraway countries, okay, but she still blames Britain. No matter how long, no matter what else, it's still Britain's fault, of course, yeah? So she's advocating for that group to have their homeland and be safe and secure, but she doesn't care at all about what's happening in this country for native Brits and what they think, right? She'll just slander them and insult them. I want to be absolutely clear. What's happening on the left is completely different to what's happening on the right, and we see major harms coming out as a result of it. It is degenerate, largely, okay? And so I'm going to show you a couple of examples of that, right, out of these protests. Look at the face coverings.
Give the top space, mate. Don't get right up behind him. Nice one. No, move back onto the pavement. The bands are moving back.
So there we go, right? There's a group, and they are antagonistic, as always. They try to get as close as they can because they're associated with Antifa. And look at the face coverings, etc. This is the real threat. These are the ones who commit the crimes of terrorist attacks. Okay, so like, I'm not going to say the name of the group, but they've done some attacks, right? I'm sure you're probably aware of it. So yeah, these are really harmful. This is not the same as what's happening at Unite the Kingdom. But the point I wanted to point out was that I didn't see a single face covering of anyone in the Unite the Kingdom march at all, not anyone. Now we're going to watch one more video, okay, and really pay attention to this. This was from today, which will probably be yesterday as time that I put this video out, okay? So May 16th. This was today at that event, and listen to what these people are saying.
In the morning.
Shameful.
Get your clip elsewhere.
Shameful.
So they've just said that they want to hang Tommy Robinson and shoot him in the neck like Charlie Kirk. It's getting very aggressive.
This is absolutely serious, okay? So we know what happened to Charlie Kirk, and there are young people there, young British people, and a number of others who are calling for the same thing to happen to Tommy Robinson. They're directly calling for it. On the streets, openly, okay? And yet the police are doing the facial recognition and the checking and the CPS, and everyone's concerned about Unite the Kingdom. And yet they're doing this, and they're doing it not just once, but on a recurring basis. And that's in the context of us seeing in America 2 assassination attempts on Donald Trump already, and of course what I already said about Charlie Kirk. And in addition, we see Islamic terrorism. So for example, events like this that are attacks on Jewish people. Where's the violence coming from? Where's this all coming from? It's coming from the left. Now I just want to cover crowd size just really quick, because I know people focus a lot on that. Now I think it was in the hundreds of thousands. It's very difficult to tell. There's these videos effectively that you can see large streets that are just completely full. When you're on the ground, it's difficult to tell. Last time, I think at the last event, I came to a conclusion around 300,000, something like that, because I did an AI analysis on the size of the crowd. I was watching them at the screens when I was way back, so I did a calculate. Anyway, Anyway, something like that, okay? So a lot of people. Now in the media, we saw this. So Sky News said an estimated 50,000. Well, I can tell you, it was definitely a lot more than 50,000. But Piers Morgan, 50,000, right? He believes it, hook, line and sinker. Piers Morgan has got this one totally wrong. This is another thing Piers Morgan has got absolutely wrong, because effectively he's a moral coward. It's really interesting. He seems to be very forthright in challenging people, but he's not forthright in challenging, right, the reality of what's happening culturally in Britain, not properly, okay? And that's moral cowardice. And the way that he goes over after Tommy Robinson is absolutely shameful. He's not perfect, don't get me wrong. He's not perfect. I think he's often very brash, right, and unnecessarily so, but maybe it takes someone like that to actually cut through and do what he's done. But ultimately, in my opinion, Tommy Robinson has stood up for vulnerable girls in his community against the odds. Against the odds, right, against the stream, when it was basically impossible, very difficult to do so, but he did it anyway. And that takes amazing courage. And he's basically mischaracterized all of the time. And he just deals with it. He just carries on. He's called a racist while standing alongside Sikhs and Jews and Hindus and people, you know, all ethnicities. And he just carries on. So quite remarkable. I think people like Piers should really think about his position and how he should be actually respecting and supporting Tommy Robinson. There is, by the way, a classism that's happening here. So Piers Morgan, moral coward. Tommy Robinson, I think he's basically, from a lot of perspectives, well, he should be knighted in my opinion. Now I just want to utterly debunk this mainstream media narrative and the narrative that Keir Starmer puts out and a lot of people put out right around the events being racist. Now there were multiple ethnicities there. I spoke to a lot of people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities. I just want to show you a few examples. So we've got Ricky Doolan, who is a speaker at the event and he's very heavily involved and he's with his partner there on the tube. Doesn't seem like a racist to me. And then we've got one of the presenters at GB News. I'm just doing this because they say it, so I just want to debunk it, okay? I don't like focusing on this stuff. This is not what I like focusing on, but I just want to debunk it, okay? So then we've got the GB News presenter. I'll give you another couple of examples. I met this guy. Of course, I didn't take a photo of everyone who was non-white that I saw. I just wanted some examples because I hear it all the time and it drives me nuts. So I just wanted to debunk it finally, okay? So then we've also got Azure, okay? And so that's another example. I just want to show you this really brief video from this lady who was there, who's non-white, amazingly, right? There was loads of people like that.
I'm furious because I'm an ex-military. I was in the RAF for 12 years. I served my country. I'm very proud of my flag. I wear my flag proudly because I was born here in this country and my parents came over in the 60s and worked hard. They contributed to the economy and they bought a house and they moved into the suburbs and it was fantastic. I was born in Whitechapel, yeah, and I wouldn't recognise it now at all, at all. And, we moved up to Lincolnshire in the countryside because I'm very horsey and
she's
at
fleed.
the end of the day, this is a Christian country, and this country is just, they've got nowhere else to go. And if all these people come in, and take over the culture, it's not going to be Britain anymore. It's not going to be Great Britain anymore, and we can't have that. And it's not a racist thing. I'm not a racist. You can't call me a racist. But at the end of the day, we have to fight for what it's a spiritual battle, though, guys. This is the thing. We have to come back to Christ. Christ is King, and we must come back to Christ because at the end of the day, we are a Christian nation.
Look, for me, I don't even like focusing on this, and I feel like I'm being forced to debunk it, but because they go on and they mischaracterize, well, I'm going to do it, yes, I'll debunk it. So that lady, brilliant, I agree with her largely. I'm not a Christian myself, but I respect the Christian roots of this country and think that, it needs to be preserved. I respect it very fully, okay? So yeah, but I think she's brilliant. Of course, there are many brilliant people like her. She's just a good example. Many, many, many people like that there. And yet we've got Narinder Kaur, right, who is out there with this shirt on. You can read what it says. And I'm thinking, Narinder, where is it? Like, who are you talking about? What, like Steve Laws? Steve Laws, that one guy, right, on his own? That's who you're talking about? So it's this illusion, this imagined thing. And this is the problem, because as soon as you create this imagined boogeyman, yeah, this terrible monster, yeah, and then what it does is it justifies attacking it in any way. So it justifies those degenerate people on the left who get into these extremist echo chambers and then act out violently. It's the same, right, across all. So Antifa, it's on Discord. It is a real massive problem. And I think that our security services need to wise up and stop focusing on this boogeyman far right and actually focus on where the real harms are happening. And they need to basically admit that it's aligned with the ideology that has been mainstreamed, that has been pushed and promoted. It's aligned with that. And I want to end by just saying a massive well done to everyone who went there. It was brilliant. So it was a real demonstration of rising above it. You've been insulted, you've been derided, you've been treated terribly by those in positions of power. You've been mischaracterized, right? And it's disgusting what's being said by politicians and on mainstream media about the people who are there, the good, decent people who were there, okay? And yet they rose above it. Amazing, brilliant. And I think just a huge well done. Awesome work. I think ultimately we just have to let these people drift off, disconnect, drift off and self-destruct in these little echo chambers of insanity that they're in. Yeah, I think that is that, because we're winning. Because the more of these events happen and the more that people report on it and talk about it and say what the reality is, then people will listen, right? And again, so that's the importance of sharing these views. So you don't have to go and make a video yourself. You can share this one if you want and put it out there. So YouTube is most definitely not going to be pushing this one, I can tell you that. Okay, right, I'm done. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. As I said, like, subscribe if you want to hear more from me. I also have a buy me a coffee link in the description if you want to support me. Anyway, okay, thanks again for watching. Until next time, cheers.